Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Reasonably Fine Art Talk. Today, we're going to talk about Petroliana, ladies and gentlemen. Petroliana, that is the painting of objects relating to gasoline stations. Why the hell gasoline stations? Beats me. I always have loved gas stations. Betty Sue is down there in Austin, Texas, and I've sent her some slides that will illustrate just how much I've always loved gasoline stations. So come with me on a little jaunt to the world of Huntrolene. Betty Sue, could you put that first slide up, please? This is the Huntrolene gas station of Milford, New Hampshire. Circa 1964, I think. My brother William, that's him on the tricycle in the foreground, he and I ran Huntrolene gasoline and Hunter Brothers Auto Parts. I'm on the roof of the Huntrolene gas station holding a cat that we called the Rochester Cat, because we went to Rochester, New York once, and when we got out of the car, when we got back to Milford, New Hampshire, there was a cat. We never actually saw the cat in the car from the drive from Rochester, New York. So we don't know if the cat was in the car, but we always just called him the Rochester Cat. I am on the roof with the Rochester Cat, and I'm wearing a railroad conductor's hat, which I actually still have over there, but I forgot to bring it over. And the Huntrolene gas station structure itself was a packing crate that one of my father's printing presses had come in. I believe it was the Heidelberg. And the props, all those wonderful gas cans, those were collected by William and Charles Hunter from the gas stations of Milford, New Hampshire. My parents always joked that the people at the gas stations were always thrilled to see the Hunter brothers arriving because that meant they didn't have to go to the dump that week. The sign that says Huntrolene, that's that white sign in the center of the packing crate, was lettered by my father, and it showed a horse-drawn chariot, and it said Huntrolene and Hunter Brothers Auto Parts. We then changed the name a couple of years later to Huntrical, more snappy and modern Huntrical. But in my adulthood, I have come to prefer Huntrolene. But as a child, I fell in love with all exactly cats and gas stations and railroads. I fell in love with all the logos. Look at all those great logos on those big oil cans up on the roof with me. Betty Sue, can we have the next slide, please? So in 1966, this is an early Hunter. This is typical of what I would draw all day long. It is, I believe, pencil and crepa oil pastel. It measures approximately probably 8.5 by 11 is probably the size paper that it's on. Because remember, my father ran a small print shop, and so we had a lot of make ready, which is stuff that you'd run through the press before printing would start to make sure the press was operating correctly. And some of it, or he'd misprint something, and so he'd bring back lots of paper that we could draw on. I was fascinated by getting the lettering right. So the logos, I just loved the logos, that SO. I was not that evolved in my signpost drawing, I would say, at this point. Though Betty Sue pointed out the perspective is pretty good for like a 7-year-old, on the roof. I think I had gotten my book on how to draw perspective by that time. Also important to note is the 3 gas pumps, the very poorly drawn, protective canopy over the gas pumps. I think it's supposed to be the kind of bat wing. Remember those bat wing canopies? the gas pumps are all different designs. That was very important to me. I always like mismatched gas pumps. I didn't like snazzy modern gas pumps. I liked the old ones because I felt sorry for them. Also worth noting is over on the far left, the tiger in the tank sign. I think it's a sign. It's hard to tell whether it's supposed to be a vehicle or a sign. But someone, when I did an Instagram post yesterday, talked about the plush tiger tails they used to give out at SO, and I believe that is what is over there on the far left. There were plush tiger tails. You're supposed to stick them coming out of your gas tank because of the great SO slogan, "Put a tiger in your tank." And this is a cup that Betty Sue and I got at Oman's Junktiques here in Bellows Falls a couple of years ago, of the tiger, of the SO tiger. This normally has the cat food, is the cat food cat scoop into the dry cat food, so I'm not going to actually drink out of it. Yeah, and maybe one of those. I can't remember. The artist no longer recollects what the true inspiration was for these. Anyway, so just know logotypes, gasoline logotypes were very important to me. I learned to read by reading gas station signs. I thought shalubrication was a word. I thought Marfax was a word. I was very early on able to spell things like inspection, lubrication, oil change, gasoline. I had some pretty big words. But there were many. My mother also always encouraged drawing. And she would say, "Draw me a picture." And I'd say, "Of what?" And she'd say, "It's spring is coming. Draw the pussy willows," because she loved nature. And I would draw the pussy willows, but I'd tend to put a gas pump in the background. Or she'd say, draw the red-winged blackbirds returning. And I would draw the red-winged blackbirds returning, but in the background, there might be a Texaco station. It was a halcyon days, ladies and gentlemen, halcyon days. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. So I've continued painting, drawing and painting gas stations. This is my favorite gas station, which is directly across from my studio. But this was painted before. It says 2005. I'm guessing it was 2005. So I was living in Bellows Falls by then. It may be a little earlier. But this is Ross and Sons gas station. You'll see several more images of it. But at this point, I don't, there's a lot of clunky painting in this. The trees, they're like toneless bottle brushes, it looks like to me. What I was going for was I wanted to do this gas station in the manner of like an English estate painting. Anyway. But again, I like older gas pumps as opposed to newer gas pumps. And those two gas pumps are still there, ladies and gentlemen. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. In 2012, I did this abandoned gas station. It really wasn't abandoned. It was just owned by an eccentric fellow who had filled it with crap. And he used to go in and sit with the bay doors open. This was in Cranford, New Jersey, and I painted this for the plein air event that used to be held in Cranford. And this one has never found a forever home. I quite like it, ladies and gentlemen. It's 16 by 32, so it's a good big size, and it still lives at my studio. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. This I did last year. It was immediately snapped up by one of my prime collectors. And this is the same gas station, ladies and gentlemen, in the background here. The same gas station is in that 2005 tonalist bottle brush painting. You'll see in this painting, it still has a cupola. And the Amoco station, where the attendant is pumping gas in that into that, what is that, a Chevy, 52 Chevy maybe. That Amoco station is long gone, as is the structure behind Ross and Sons service station, as is the cupola. The cupola got blown off by a windstorm in the early 1950s. But aside from that, that gas station in the background still looks pretty much the same. This is a 30 by 30. I think it's a pretty big, I think it's 30 by 30, pretty big painting. Big fun to do. Next slide, Betty Sue. This is the gas station just a couple of months ago, I think in January here in Bellows Falls. I'm looking from the door of my studio across the street at the gas station. Isn't it beautiful? I always loved this gas station and the architecture of Bellows Falls. My mother thought this gas station was, quote unquote, an eyesore. She's like, why do you paint those awful things, Charles? Why do you paint the pussy willows? Next slide, please, Betty Sue. So in around 2010, I started doing paintings of gas pumps because there's something very comforting to me to return to just depicting something that you love. I like what I'm doing now more than I like this series, this one and the next one you'll see, which I feel like they're trying a little hard to be artistic. All I really wanted to do was paint the logos and paint the gas pumps, but I kind of felt like I had to be making some sort of statement. So I called these gas pump devotionals, and I used like metallic gold paint for the orange disc, so it would be reminiscent of, illuminated halos behind religious iconography. I was trying to play with the idea of religious iconography in gas stations. And I also scribbled like diary, not diary entries, but like journal entries if someone was on a road trip. That was also trying to make it look artistic. That's what all that handwriting is. It's like, got a hamburger in Wilkes-Barre, some stuff like that. Trying too hard, ladies and gentlemen, trying too hard. Next slide, please. And another one was Flying A. This was the gas pump devotional, Flying A, obviously. Flying A was a gas brand of the Tidewater Oil Company. And why, you think, why would the Tidewater Oil Company call its gasoline Flying A? Well, it turned out they made they made aviation fuel. And when they branched out into selling retail gasoline, they were like, Tidewater Flying A was showing the high quality, that was aviation quality gasoline. Very, very nice logo. They also had a terrific mascot, Axelrod. Axelrod was a basset hound, and they had big posters that had pictures of this basset hound, and it said, "Ooh, do we worry about your car?" And they made plastic plastic piggy banks of Axelrod. And in 1964, I think, or 65, my mom published an article. My mom was a writer. She wrote for like Red Book and the women's magazines of the 1960s. And she wrote a piece called Charles Learns to Read about how I taught myself to read reading gas station signs. And it got turned down by every publication out there. Except one day she was at the library and she found a magazine called Petroleum Today that was a mouthpiece for the petroleum industry. And she sent it to them and they snapped it up. And that was where my artwork got published for the very first time, ladies and gentlemen. I did all kinds of good good drawings of all these different kinds of gas stations, and they published them in the article of Charles Learns to Read, but they removed all the logos. They removed all the logos. So you'd have these signs, the signposts were my weakest link. Signpost, no sign. They take the Texaco sign away, which outraged me, those Philistines messing with my artwork. But I got more swag from every oil company. They all sent me, all these piggy banks and all these t-shirts and little pen sets and little medallions. And the Flying A company sent me an Axelrod. They sent me an Axelrod piggy bank. It is big. It's about 14 inches long. And then since then, my friend Lamont Barnett, who runs the jewelry store in town, he was in my studio once. He's like, "Oh, you got one of those dog piggy banks? I have one of those, and you can have it." He brought it over, and I now had 2 Axelrods. And then Betty Sue and I were at Oman's Junk Teaks a couple of years ago. Not the same trip where we got this, but another trip, and there was an Axelrod. So I now have 3 Axelrods. And we went to the Flying A Museum in a small town in Texas. I now can't remember where it was, but it's where that neat jail art gallery is. It's near Abilene. And there's a Flying A museum there. And the guy there does not have an Axelrod. And I do need to send him one on loan, just on loan. All right. Next, Corduroy does not mind the Axelrods. They are up on a shelf. She doesn't have to deal with them. I have not seen the umbrellas of Cherbourg. It does feature a gas station. I might like it a lot. When my sister was in college, let's have the next slide, Betty Sue. When my sister was in college, a bunch of her friends, would do school year abroad or come travel internationally. And they were all charged with finding Charles gas stations. That was my mission in life, was finding brands of gasoline that I had never heard of before. So I would have been all over the umbrellas of Cherbourg because I might have learned some new gasoline brands. There was one time someone came back from Italy and said they brought a picture of a gas called Super Corte Maggiore. I was like, whoa, how many letters in that? And one time, my mom and I, when we'd be driving around, she'd deliver my dad's printing to the customers, and she'd pick me up from school and then do printing deliveries. And I would say, "Are you the rich Edith Hunter or the poor Edith Hunter?" And if she said, "I'm the rich Edith Hunter," that meant that she had like $2 or $3 in her pocket, in her pocketbook, and we could stop at a new gas station and get $1 worth of gas. And one time we were down right over the Massachusetts border in, I think, Tyngsboro, Massachusetts, and we passed a new gas called St. Hilaire. I never heard of St. Hilaire. And we went in and we stopped. It's because she was the rich Edith Hunter. We got a gallon of gas, and I went in to ask if they had any road maps I could have, because you could always get free road maps. And I went in and I said, "Do you have any road maps?" And they're like, "Oh no, we don't have any road maps. Well, we only have 2 gas stations." I said, "Oh, because you're a new gas. This is a new gas for me. And I collect gas stations." They said, "Oh, you do? Well, this is Mr. St. Hilaire." And he was in there. It was like meeting God. It was like, or Carl Yastrzemski. It was awesome. And he signed a piece of paper for me. I no longer have that autograph, ladies and gentlemen. I no longer have that autograph. But it was cool. Anyway, here's a 2018 of a Texaco Sky Chief. I love the old Texaco logo, the one that's the star. They used this logo, the round one, the circular one, until about, I don't know, early 1960s. Then they introduced the kind of, all the gas companies did these kind of ovalish, squarish, or ovalish rectangles, and that wasn't as good. I will say, when Texaco did its rebranding in the 1990s, that black and red simplified design, they brought back the round Texaco star, and I thought it's one of the few modern rebrandings of gasoline that I really approve of. I thought they did a very good job. But this is getting into my more mature style of gas pump, which is just letting the gas pump be the gas pump. I love the patina of wear on it. I'm not trying to put it in a larger landscape. This is a celebration of a gas pump. It's really, what is really fun about it is trying to get the logo on the pump painted well. I was, as many of you know, I was a not very good sign painter. I also was an avid model maker and model railroader when I was a kid. And doing these paintings has some elements of like sign painting. It has some elements of modeling. It's the closest to modeling that I do in my artwork. There's no real artistic, I'm not trying to solve a problem in a new way when I do these gas pump paintings. I'm just having fun with something I love. This gas pump, I believe, is a Tokheim, Tokheim, and it would have had one of those globes on the top of it when it was new. I came along when the globes were really, they'd been discontinued. They were few and far between. And so to me, a gas pump without a globe looks more correct than the ones with globes. Collectors, I know now, there are a lot of man caves out there that have gas pumps in them. And they all have the reproduction of the glass globes on the top. And I say that's spinach, and I say to hell with it. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. This is another Sky Chief, because that first Sky Chief sold so fast. Someone said, "Can you do another Sky Chief?" And I said, "Certainly," because I'm a capitalist. And so I did this one. It's not, it looks more like an astronaut, I think. And I didn't get into as much detail on the register itself. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. Okay, so this comes, now this is for you folks who are interested in the Charlie Hunter technique. How does he do this, ladies and gentlemen? How does he create the wonderment of celebrating the American gas pump? Well, this is an 8x16 that I did last week, and it shows important tools. I had this old, someone had given it to me a few years ago. Someone of the Putney painters, may have been Katie Swatland. It is a piece of masonite with lead white priming. And boy, it's a joy to paint on, ladies and gentlemen. Toxic, but a joy to paint on. And I thought it was only in keeping for a gas pump. I do use water mixable oils, and I do not recommend oil primed linen, because somehow the water seems to get into the linen and the painting develops little cracks years later. But this masonite with the lead on it, it's not, there's no fabric. And the water mixable oils, I wasn't using much water. It really was kind of out of the tube thickness of paint with a little bit of safflower oil. The logos themselves, however, are painted in acrylic ink, Rembrandt acrylic ink. And you can see important tools that were used here. There is, on the right, there is the squeegee. On the left, there is the Rosemary Badger blender. And then to the right of the Rosemary Badger blender, That's a Princeton Aspen rigger brush. Very handy. That you need very, very fine brushes for painting the logos. Okay, so oh, and the other thing I wanted to point out was the squeegee is resting on that piece of wood. That piece of wood has blocks of wood on either end, so I can rest my arm on that block of wood above the surface that I'm painting on. So I can do that detail work very easily. Next slide, please. So this was the source. This was the source photo that I used. You can see it does not have a Sinclair logo on it. It is not green. It is. I have fictionalized, ladies and gentlemen. I have fictionalized in service of filthy mammon. It is, however, a Sinclair pump, because the little sign underneath the register part does say Dyno, which was Sinclair's gasoline brand, Sinclair Dyno Gas. Have I started incorporating sign painting brushes for my logo work? Not really. What I'm using really are craft brushes, and I'll show those in a minute. Next slide, please. So here are the secrets. This on the left, we're getting into it now, ladies and gentlemen. This is a new 6x12 that I am working on. It is not completed. And it is going to be for the Buffalo Bill Art Show and Sale in Cody, Wyoming. And why Husky gasoline, ladies and gentlemen? Well, because Husky gasoline originated in Cody, Wyoming, and I figure someone in Cody, Wyoming is going to want a Husky gasoline gas pump painting, because it's a good compromise for married couples, ladies and gentlemen, because not a lot of women that I know of really want an actual gas pump in the house. Now, I know that's sexist, so I'm sure there are some women out there who love Petroliana, but it does seem to be a male-dominated field. The people who really glom on to gasoline stuff tend to be guys, tend to be men remembering their youth. Anyway, so I did my research and I found pictures of a Husky gasoline pump, but it's in beautiful shape. No, it wasn't of the full pump. It was just the top half of the pump. So, but you could see it had part of the logo, and it had the top of the pump, so I could see the orange colors. And I went online. I found the Husky logo that was in the photograph. And then I found this is a Gilbarco gas pump. I found a nice photograph of a Gilbarco gas pump. And I took the photo, and the photo you'll see is 100% the exact same size as the image on the painting. And the reason they appear different sizes there is because the painting that is on, I didn't have any more lead primed masonite panels, but I've been buying these Blick hardwood panels on 1.5 inch cradled, it's basswood on 1.5 inch cradled hardwood backing. And they're beautiful. And so what I did was trying to replicate the idea of the lead primed masonite panel. Well, you'll see. But anyway, this is the painting is 1.5 inches closer to the camera lens than the photograph, which is why the gas pump in the painting appears bigger than the gas pump in the photo. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. So this is the back of that photo. And you'll see I just took a soft pencil and I cross-hatched, leaving lead or graphite all over the edges that I needed to transfer. And then I taped it down on my panel and I traced. Next slide, please, Betty Sue. And see, look over there on the right. That is before I started applying paint onto the panel. I have traced, that's my trace of the gas pump. And then I printed out the Husky logo at the size I needed it to be on the gas pump. I did the same process of graphite on the back of that logo, and then I traced with pencil, using a pen to make a nice heavy, to have an imprint hard enough, trace the logo, and then with the Amsterdam acrylic inks, I painted the logo by hand onto the gas pumps. And then, the other thing I wanted to tell you is before I applied the acrylic ink, I had my pencil tracing on the panel, and to mimic the lead priming, what I did was I took latex enamel, semi-gloss white latex enamel, let it dry, put it down on the panel, let it dry thoroughly, did my pencil drawing, or did the pencil trace, and then I took a coat of acrylic gloss gel medium, not gel medium, acrylic gloss medium, so it's a liquid, kind of the consistency of heavy cream. And I just did one coat of that, painted that on top, let that dry thoroughly overnight. And then the next day, with very fine brushes, I did the Husky logo. Next slide. And see, I'm referencing, can you go back 1 second? See, up above the panel is the photograph that I found of the gas pump with the Husky logo. So I found the photograph of the mobile pump, basically the same pump, and just adapted it to be the Husky pump. Next slide, please. So this on the right is the photograph as it is right now. And then here to the left, these are the brushes that I typically have, or that I'm using in this painting. Again, the squeegee is used on my glass palette. I will mix the oil color of, let's say the orange, but to get that really straight line between the orange and the white. So the white is the substrate color, right? The orange, I mix it. It's just the out of the tube thickness of paint. And then I place the squeegee blade on there, on the palette, and then I place very carefully right on the line, boom, just kiss it. I'm not pulling with the squeegee, I'm just applying paint. And then I apply paint, the orange on the right side of that line. And then I paint orange back and forth in between. So the squeegee basically gives me my borders, and I paint between the borders. Have I used a magnifying glass? No, that's a level beyond what I'm trying to have it work basically from 1.5 feet away. Then also the chrome bands, the horizontal bands on the gas pump, those are done with the squeegee, same process. No, they're done. Sorry, I lay the paint down with these. These are Black Silver by Dynasty brushes. On my the Hunter Studio store, it has a link to Blick, where they don't stock the Black Silver by Dynasties, but they do stock Simply Simmons, which are very, very similar brushes. And so you can get them by going to hunter-studio.com, going to the store, going to the brushes. So I lay the paint down. These are flats. They're basically a craft brush as opposed to a painting brush. You can get real nice, sharp lines with them. I lay the paint down, and then I take a dry squeegee and I press in between to get the thin lines that read as the chromium. Then, okay, so there's the squeegee. Then there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the Black Silver by Dynasties. Then there is a Rosemary and Company Monday mop. And you'll see it's almost using a dry brush technique to get the patina, the stain marks, the ravages of time on that white enamel. And what I do is I will put I'll brush with the Black Silver by Dynasty, and then using the dry Monday mop, I will soften the edges. I also do a similar thing with that beat up fan brush. There's a Q-tip. I'm using that to just clean, to go back to the surface if I get a stain where I don't want it. And then the little tiny brush, that's what I did the most of the lettering of the Husky gas pump with. That's it's a cheap synthetic, another Dynasty brush called Eye of the Tiger. I bought a set of them for $5. They're not very durable, but while they last, they make a beautiful mark. I believe that's the last slide. Is that the last slide, Betty Sue? If it is, blow me up to full size. So anyway, those are the secrets of Petroliana, ladies and gentlemen. Why do I do it? I do it just because it is something I purely love, very uncomplicated, and it's fun. I would not want to do paintings of gas pumps all the time. Just as, you know, I really am not a fan of that saccharine nostalgia style of painting that will show a pristine 1957 Chevy in front of a shining Sunoco pump with a buxom blonde in the 57 Chevy and a smiling attendant wearing a spotless uniform, you know, pumping the gas. That stuff feels gross to me, or it's not my taste. It's saccharine. It's too much of a muchness. But a simple, loving portrait of an old gas pump, I think that's pretty aces. Anyway, one last funny thing that last week I posted that Sinclair pump painting on my Instagram, and Kathy Anderson, who's a beloved friend of one of the Putney painters, she does gorgeous florals. If you all know her work, she texted me and said, "I was just about to paint that exact same thing." I said, "Well, you know, the florals were the flowers were just over to the left of the gas pump. I couldn't quite fit them in my painting." But anyway, so all of us just need to paint the stuff that we love, and I happen to love gas pumps. So thanks for listening, ladies and gentlemen. You take good care, and we'll see you next week. I think Don Demers is going to be our guest next week. So we'll see you there. Take good care. Bye-bye.